There's over 4,000 huge old oaks here in this one woodland. It's absolutely incredible. By comparison to Europe, the UK has lost much of its woodland cover. However, within Britain, there are nearly 200,000 ancient trees, and many of these are oaks. There are more ancient oaks in the UK than the whole of Europe combined. It would be good to describe first what an ancient tree is, just besides a really, really old tree. So any tree can be considered ancient. For something like a silver birch, a fast-growing species, it's around 150 years. For something like an oak, it's around 400 years, and for really long-lived species like a yew, it's around 800 years. They often have huge, wide stems and many hollows and cavities and bent and twisted, gnarled branches full of deadwood. And with all of this deadwood, the upper crown begins to die off. The tree begins to retrench. Its live growth moves further down the tree, and you have this classic stag's heading where you have this deadwood spiking up at the top. And these trees are home to an array of wildlife, from insects to fungi to mosses, lichens, birds and mammals. At every point in these trees' life cycle, they are working intrinsically with nature. It's just when they get really old and big that they get really special for wildlife. And it's often said that these trees can support over 2,000 different species. You know, I see these trees, you quite often see them in the landscape, standing proud on their own. I see them as pillars of life, but when you come to a place like this and there's so many of them together, it's really special. But why are there so many ancient trees here, and in the UK for that matter, when we've lost so much of our woodland? Well, you see, it's got nothing to do with our soils, our weather, our climate, or the types of oaks that grow here. It's got nothing to do with that. It's actually completely to do with our history. And it's a history which began around the time of the Norman Conquest, 1066. William I came to England and he designated much of the country into royal parks where he had exclusive rights to the deer, and it was forbidden to chop down trees. It's that forest law within these royal forests which saw the early preservation of Britain's trees. And outside of these areas saw a real explosion of deer parks throughout the UK. There was a real craze for hunting deer and an appetite for venison. Keeping the parks in prime state for hunting meant again that it was not converted to agriculture or forestry. And where I am today is a surviving example of those medieval deer parks. And pretty much all of these trees here are historic pollards. Now, pollarding is a form of management whereby you can sustainably harvest wood from a tree. The idea is that you take the wood from the same point on the tree on a cyclical basis. But what happens is with historic pollards, now these are trees which are used to being cut. It was around the 18th century that we actually stopped doing this in this country, and what happened is where these trees were so used to being cut, they all of a sudden had room to grow, and they sprouted these crowns above these huge basal stems, and yeah, they seemingly grow in each and every direction that they want to, and it just forms a really special habitat, especially when you've got so many of them all together. In this area, all of the oaks were behind a fence, so I couldn't access them properly, but from where I was standing, there seemed to be no end to them. Outside and in the more wooded area, there was still plenty to explore. Massive, looks like it has some kind of root decay. It's just failed and blown over, but it's a big one, like all the trees here. Quite a nice beefsteak fungus there. So this is the more wooded section here, and in here you've still got some huge big oaks. Seemingly everywhere you look, there's signs of oaks at different stages of life, but they're all huge. Got some really big hollies in here as well, and some birch. It's a really special habitat, one which I wasn't aware of. At this point, I have to thank my good old friend Ollie, who let me know about this magical place. He's also someone that I used to work with. Big old trees are something which is quite close to my heart because I used to work in arboriculture. I studied. I spent most of my days looking at really old big trees. So if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about my background and how I've come to start Live Curious and all the work I do at Mossy Earth, let me know and perhaps I'll make a video on it. And sadly, much like many of our other significant and naturally beautiful parts of our landscapes, these ancient trees, these ancient oaks aren't free from threats. Acute oak decline is a real threat to these trees, something which affects mature oak trees, and it's quite complex. It's something which we're still trying to understand because it stems from a range of issues, but in serious cases it can kill a mature oak tree within 5 years, with symptoms being leaf loss and bleeding from the stem from bacterial infections. Droughts, flooding, pollution, pests and diseases are all contributing to acute oak decline. This is something which I will be looking to make a dedicated video on in the future, as there will be a lot to cover and I want to connect with those doing this important work. Wow. That looks like the most perfect little seat in there just to sit down. Look at that. And if you want to learn more about the ancient trees of the UK, then check out the Ancient Tree Inventory. This is a map, effectively, of nearly 200,000 ancient trees across the UK. If you've enjoyed the video, then like it, subscribe, comment, do all of the YouTube things to really support the channel, to support Live Curious. And you can also become a member where you'll gain access to exclusive content. Be sure to go and check out the description as well, because in there I've put links to Mossy Earth, which is the company which I work for, where we set up and we implement rewilding projects through a membership, which anyone can join and be a part of. I've really enjoyed exploring these woods and just spending time with big trees again. I really recommend it. If you haven't, get out, find some big trees and just look at them, give them a cuddle. I'm going to give this tree a hug. I think he deserves it. I think I deserve it as well. All right. Thanks for watching. Live Curious.